Midweek edition of the Just Basketball Show. Welcome to another episode. I am Brendon Kleen. That is Chris Manning. Follow us on all your podcast platforms of choice if you're finding us for the first time or if you've just never done so. Hit subscribe on YouTube. Drop a comment if you feel so inclined. Basketball is in full swing. The playoffs are very good, and we are happy to be joining you again. Follow us on social media, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you are. We are. Get engaged that way. Our wonderful social producer is putting together tons of Lakers propaganda edits each and every day to satiate your desire to see the purple and gold in all of its glory, so you can hit that stuff as well. We're going to talk about burning questions from the NBA playoffs today, the things that, now that we're midway, almost all the way through these first-round series, that's on our mind. What are the end of one team's season going to tell us? How have the way that other teams have risen to the occasion, changing how we're thinking of them, all sorts of different burning questions. But Chris, I think we owe the audience a little bit of a you're welcome here. Because I demanded that we talk about if the playoffs were good. I saw some complaining online and wanted to do a few minutes at the top of Monday's show debating this. And then you and I were like texting back and forth because we knew we were recording. Today's Tuesday that we're recording, and we were like, yeah, Monday games might suck. Like, hopefully we have something to talk about because it's a quick turnaround. There's not going to be a lot of basketball between now and then. And then Monday's games might have been the best of the playoffs, at least in terms of unexpected sort of vintage performances. And that's kind of where I want to start, which is Jimmy Butler, who has graduated. At one point, he was James Butler, Chris, if you remember Bruce Brown, Once Upon a Time, and then Jimmy said, no, my name's actually Jimmy on my birth certificate. Don't call me James. That's weird. He's now Himmy Butler. He has been doing this long enough to go through multiple iterations of internet culture to now be the poster child of him. Not Austin Reeves, not anyone else. It is Jimmy Butler, mostly because his name really fits that. But 56 points, 119 to 114, 3-1 series lead over the Milwaukee Bucks. I think there's a lot on the Milwaukee side as they face elimination here and have to do a pretty incredible feat of coming down back from down this bad, which they've never really had to do. But we have to start on the Butler side. 41 minutes, 19 of 28 from the field, 15 of 18 from the free throw line. I believe he had 22 points in the first quarter alone, and then he had like 15 in the final few minutes of this game. Are you surprised that we still are getting these?
No. I with Jimmy Butler, that guy, I think his style is built for this. I think his temperament is built for this. I think also that organization is built for this. Like, I don't think this is happening if it's against another team. If it's against, I don't think this is happening to Milwaukee. This is not being done to Milwaukee. If this is like the Cleveland Cavaliers or like even the Knicks, like I don't think those teams are in this position to push on this way. And Butler is the tip of that spear, right? He is relentless. He always gets the line. He always draws fouls. He plays physical on both sides of the ball. And he has a limitless gas tank. Like, he has the right style to be this guy. We've seen this over and over again. The bubble, I know like he became a meme, but like that bubble exemplified like everything that Jimmy Butler brings to a team and can bring to the playoffs. He is the template for how to do this stuff. If you're not the best athlete, or like that, he's not a great 3-point shooter. He's never been a really good 3-point shooter, and yet he's doing this, and he just ruins teams, and he's relentless. He's
not a good 3-point shooter outside of like the most unexpected moments, and then it's like he's Klay Thompson.
Right. So it's like you get this guy that is just built to do all of this stuff, to be built in all this way. And I'm just not surprised. Like, I was waiting for a Jimmy game like this. I didn't know if it was going to like get them up 3-1. I thought maybe it comes in like game 6 and it forces that game 7 or something. I thought maybe that's where this is headed. But like, I'm not surprised. Like, this is what Jimmy Butler does. This is who he is.
Yeah, let's go back a little bit. His career is so fascinating to me because I'm looking at, Basketball Reference has career playoffs game log. That's one of the options you can look at, and it's just from the beginning of their career up through now, only their playoff games. And his first series was 11 years ago. This guy's been around for a long time at this point, but he barely played. that first year, 2012. Then 2013, role player. He's starting, playing a ton of minutes because it's Tibbs, but not looked to as a scorer, really, because that was still the tail end of the Noah, Boozer, Dang era of that team with Rose trying to come back and all that stuff. Then he gets to his final series in Chicago, which is 2017, the year before he gets drafted in June during the draft of that year. He has two 30-point games against Boston. That series goes 6 games. That's the one everybody remembers when Wade was a Bull and they went up 2-0 on the road, and then Boston came back to beat them in 6. But then, Minnesota, Philadelphia, he has some moments. And then it's like he gets to Miami, to your point about the organization. His very first second-round series, which was the bubble, as a member of the Heat, was beating this Bucks team. He had 40 points in Game 1, 30 points in Game 3. They beat him in 5. Then, obviously, there's the finals. He has a 40-point game in that. He has a 35-point game in that. The meme you mentioned with the exhaustion of all of that. And it just feels like he became a completely different guy where he's able to do this. And I wonder what the ingredients really are for all of this, because he's played the same way his whole career. Is it being empowered to be the lead guy? Is it finding a culture and sort of like a set of players that are going to fight and create turnovers and not give up and not be whatever he thought of Andrew Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns once upon a time, or Ben Simmons? Is it that? Like, it is so ethereal, because when he's been given the chance, I feel like he's kind of shown up in a lot of ways, but this is just, 20% better since he got to Miami.
You know who I'd want to ask this question? Like, I've one person that comes to mind that I would specifically want to ask what makes Jimmy Butler so special. Can you guess who it is?
Joel Embiid?
It's Joel Embiid, because last night, Joel Embiid, who on repeated occasions has talked about how much he wished Jimmy didn't leave and they messed that up and all this stuff, tweets playoff MF Himmy Butler. Just thinking about, I'm sure I would love to have watched that game with Embiid. I would love to know what's going through his brain. I think obviously he would be the spear point in a different way, but it's you can tell the respect he has for him, and Butler also was that's the MVP. There's clearly some mutual love between those two guys. I would love to see how Embiid would define this, because I think you hit a lot of the stuff, but to hear from a guy who played with him, who clearly wishes he still played with him, I would very much like to know what Embiid would have to say about this.
This was the most points scored in a playoff game by a Heat player ever. Mm-hmm. So you might remember Shaquille O'Neal, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh all played for this team. Never scored 56 points. I would imagine 56 is in at least the top 20 of all-time playoff scoring. I didn't see that number, that ranking necessarily going around, Chris, but it's super special. That first quarter was unreal, and I think there's an element here of this particular matchup, right? This is now the third time they faced each other in the playoffs, Milwaukee and Miami. And it sounds so basic because the talking heads on ESPN and whatnot like to throw this out gratuitously when it doesn't really actually apply, of so-and-so is not afraid of such and such team or such and such player. Jimmy Butler's not afraid of the Milwaukee Bucks. He's not afraid of Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's not afraid of Drew Holiday. Definitely not afraid of Chris Middleton, who we can get to. And that does mean something to me, because I think that there is an element. It's like the cornerback who the opposing team in the NFL just doesn't throw to, right? That's how Drew Holiday is a lot of the time. And especially in isolation on the, inside the arc, that is how Giannis is for almost everybody. He's a defensive player of the year. Drew Holiday has just got the Athletic. They just voted him as the most best defender and most underrated defender in the league. And Butler was ISOing those guys like it was, G leaguers.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And I do that matters, right? Facing this particular team and not worrying about who he's going up against, I think that speaks to what you were talking about of it wouldn't happen if it was any other team. And I think that has to also, it's not just coming from Butler. Like, that has to also be coming from Spo, Riley, Kyle Lowry, Bam, whatever it is, Haslam, that they walk into every series feeling like it doesn't matter. They're either going to lose because they didn't play their best or they're going to win. There's not going to be an opponent that takes it to them.
100%. I mean, this is where I was getting to with like the organization stuff. It's like they have the best coach in the league. They have an organization that like we can make fun of Heat culture and like we should tease it because it often is very silly and stupid. And like, you know, like people make fun of Udonis Haslam stuff, and I get it. But this is like a team that like is kind of has this mindset of like we're just not going to give in. We're not going to have these issues where like we're going to veer away from this moment. Like other teams 100% would have crumbled if Giannis comes back, right? Like there's no doubt in my mind that another team sees Giannis come back and it's like, well, okay. Like this is a problem for us. And they crater and the Bucks win and we kind of just move on with our lives. But now we're looking at 3-1. And I don't know how good of it. Like 3-1, as good as as good as Milwaukee is, as good as Giannis is. Coming back from 3-1 is going to be a really tall test. They have to rip off 3 in a row against a Heat team that just had this comeback against them. That is going to be feeling confident. That has Jimmy Butler, and Jimmy Butler knows he can kind of get whatever he wants. I don't think the Bucks are going to.
Can we pause for a second?
Yeah,
because I can appreciate that there is some legitimacy to Heat culture and that it's not just a joke and that there is some, like Eric Spoelstra did the between third and fourth quarter interview on TNT in that game last night. Also, shout out to Kevin Harlan. If anyone played better than Butler, it was Harlan. He was on an absolute roll in that game. But anyway, Spo does the interview and he's like, we have the grit and effort needed to win this game. It's just a matter. They were down 11 at this point, like, mind you. And Spo was like, yeah, we have everything it takes. We just got to do it. But it's Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just think you can't overstate that this team is going against that guy. Like you said, in his return to the lineup. The other games, they didn't have him in there. But Butler didn't just score 30 again like he's been doing this series. He doubled that against the best player in the NBA.
The Bucks are 0-2 with Giannis in the lineup in this series.
Didn't he play like 11 minutes or something in game one?
It counts. He played. The games where Giannis played, they're 0-2.
They were up when he went out, as Heat fans have loved to point out on Twitter.
Okay, regardless, they've lost. Like this is where we're at with this now. This is a very precarious place. So what percentage chance would you give Milwaukee of pulling this off? Like 10%? 15%?
Well, let's talk about this real quick because I want to mention, I'm sure people are listening and feeling like the Heat did get swept by Milwaukee 2 years ago when the Bucks went to the finals. Mm-hmm. I don't want to leave that out, and I think it's actually interesting because you mentioned the culture and everything else, and I there's some things about what Miami is doing right now that I just are unexplainable. No matter how much I can pump up Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley and Haslam and whatever, but that year they were starting the corpse of Trevor Ariza. I will always trash Trevor Ariza. He did not leave Phoenix on good terms, so that's what my anger is there. Hero is not himself, not good enough yet, and they had basically no bench. Dragic was on his last legs. I think he, if I'm looking back correctly, was actually fine enough, and Bam wasn't where he needed to be. You fast forward to this series. I saw this from Seth Partnow over at The Athletic, Chris. The Heat are shooting 52% on contested threes this season. Or this series.
Jesus.
52% on contested threes. And guys like, they lost Hero, obviously, in Game 1. Oladipo had the severe injury in Game 4. They're getting threes from Duncan Robinson, who's back from the dead. Cody Martin, who played his absolute ass off in the fourth quarter of that game. Kevin Love is suddenly playable, even with Giannis on the court. Gabe Vincent, they're going, going to him probably too much, but he's making them.
The Kevin Love thing's making my I don't want to talk about the Cavs the next day, but that's been making me just like squint a little bit.
A little crazy. Yeah.
Not crazy,
so
but
anyway,
it's like the guy that played in the finals and was hurt, and like maybe there's something there that we don't totally understand. Like maybe you should have like tried to find a way to keep that guy around in case you needed to. I mean, maybe he would have helped you in a big environment where your team looked overwhelmed in New York City, and also you need help rebounding. I'm just wondering if that guy could have maybe helped you if you would have figured that out. But,
I was waiting for Giannis to come back because I felt like that would just be the snap of the fingers where Love was going to be played off the court. And that has not happened. He was very solid last night. They're running double drag. They're running horns. He's a smart guy when he's out there, so he's not exactly going to make mistakes. 2 assists, 0 turnovers, 7 rebounds, 2 out of 5 from 3. He's a -6, but whatever. He's a body better than a lot of the other options they have. They don't have to go to Yurtsevin, right? All right, so on the Bucks side, how big of a percent chance do I give them? It can't be 50 because that is something we just haven't seen much in the NBA, but it's not unprecedented, and great players tend to be the ones to do it, whether that's Curry in, Clay in the Thunder series and then having it done right back to them by LeBron and Kyrie or, any number of other times. It is definitely on the table. I think Chris Middleton needs to play better.
Oh, yeah.
That's my number one thing. If he's never had a lot of lift on his shot, it's looked inconsistent, if not outright bad, since he's been back, even on his best days. I know he had 8 assists and 3 turnovers. I feel like that was more a thing of like, I'm not making my shots, so I need to give the ball up, not I'm creating advantages and like dishing to a teammate. The best offensive players on the Bucks in this game were Giannis and Brook Lopez, and that pick and roll was really, really working. I also think there's something to be said for the Bucks aren't exactly afraid of the Heat either. Late in that game, Giannis and Brook were being guarded by Bam and Jimmy, and the Bucks were like, okay, fuck it. We're going to go ahead and put our best guys in the offense, and even if it's your best defenders, so be it. And that's what happened. So I don't think that the Bucks are necessarily some sort of humongous underdog to come back and do this. They do still have home court in 5 and 7, but coming off of the injuries the way that Giannis and Middleton are, it's not a normal set of circumstances. And I think Middleton especially, like if he's not able to score, not able to get past his guy, not able to guard Butler much at all, he just was getting blown by Butler. Butler was blowing by him every single time. That's an emergency because they're not going to win it if they have to put, Connaughton or Portis in that spot.
And obviously this would lead to some very dire realities perhaps for the Milwaukee Bucks. This would lead some places that I don't know what to make of it. I don't know exactly like how we quantify that or whatever, but this heads some.
What's your percent chance?
I'm at like 25.
Wow. I give him more than that. I would say like at least like a third, 40, somewhere in there.
3-1 is just so hard. It's just like it's 3-1 against a group that I don't think is going to feel the pressure against them.
Game 6 on the road. Not to throw shots at a crowd that was really rocking in Game 4, but like Miami's crowd's not amazing, but it's still a road game,
Yeah. There's
They came back from 2-0 in the finals and won 4 straight games, Chris. So
I know,
maybe I'm having a little bit of PTSD on that in 2021, but
it's just it's the 3-1. It's not. It's like 2-0. It's like it's like I get that, but it's the 3-1 thing that just tripped me up because the Heat just need to win once. They don't need to win twice.
Suns didn't win once in the finals, right? Like I hear you, but I think if anybody's gonna do it, it's gonna be Giannis. It's just a matter of is that back gonna allow him to? I think.
Bingo. And we don't know. And
he also was limping on his ankle at one point in the game.
Well, and they just will need a lot more of Middleton. Like you said that, but it's just like they can't survive another Middleton game like that. They can't. And Drew, I think Drew had like kind of an offensive night as well, if I'm remembering correctly. I might be like misremembering that, but like, and also just like, look, Drew is. We talked about the defensive stuff. He cannot have like that kind of Jimmy game again, where like that's been a grimy matchup. But he has to win it more. I think he can't get torched like even for like 40 again. Yeah. So in game 2, Holiday was 6 of 19, 2 of 11 from 3. Like if they have a 2 of 11 Drew game again, and Middleton's 4 of 12, like 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, Holiday can be better too, for sure.
And like I get they're asking a ton of him defensively, so this really maybe offensively comes back to Middleton. And comes back to can Jay Crowder hit a couple threes? They got
Jay Crowder got a DNP in this game.
Yeah, and Connaughton was 1 of 6 from 3. So I wonder if Crowder comes back the other way. Brooke had 36, and it just like
He was a monster.
and just like gets wiped away.
And he just completely suffocated Bam in the post. Bam could not get a bucket off in this game unless he just happened to make his mid-range jumper because Brook was in that drop. To me, quickly on the Bucks, last thing, I feel like Portis playing more and them just going huge is an adjustment I would like for them to try, to have Middleton effectively playing the 2. Giannis on Jimmy at that point, and then, Brook on Bam, and then, yes, the Heat can play small, but, like, are you really killing yourself if Portis has to guard Cody Martin or something? Probably not.
Right.
Haywood Highsmith, I don't think so. Love, obviously, when he's out there, that's even easier, and then you can just clog the paint more, try to put bodies between the basket and Jimmy. Not foul if you can. That would be nice. But we'll see. I think that they can win Game 5, and then, that's a little bit of a sigh of relief. I do feel like the one game at a time aspect of this 3-1 situation, I do think the experienced team, both teams are experienced. Miami is too, but Milwaukee kind of having been in a lot of situations before would help them. We'll see, though. All right, Lakers, Grizzlies. 117-111. Lakers also go up 3-1 with a home win in Game 4. This series has been very, very strange to me, Chris, and
It's not been
I
good.
don't feel like this game was good, I think.
Yeah, but the series as a whole even this was like, it's a little clunky. It's a little like a lot of missed shots. Like Ja missed like a ton of shots this game. Jaren Jackson missed a ton of shots this game. Both teams are just trying to like finagle like on just enough offense out of stuff, and then it's relying on like an AD block and LeBron here, and Austin. Like it's just relying on like individual plays more than it is like back and forth. If that makes sense.
Yeah, Grizzlies half-court offensive rating was 76.8 in this game. 7th percentile according to Cleaning the Glass. Lakers not much better, about basically 90 points per 100 possessions. So it's been a slog. And honestly, they weren't even that effective running in this game, either team. It was just that they ran a lot. And so the points got up to 117, 111. But really my takeaway, my sort of thought going forward about this is, if you have any thoughts or if you're able to make sense, Chris, of what's going on with Memphis, I would love to hear it. It's a weird team that has obviously had the problems, but you still felt like should be good once Ja got back, and it just doesn't feel like they know what they are right now. But on the Lakers side, I just think as they look forward, because they should win this series now, I really don't know if they're going to be able to score in the half court consistently. As much as I want to give LeBron a humongous amount of credit for the 3 drives that he had, 2 to make the off-the-glass layup above the box on the backboard, which is insane, and 1 against Dillon Brooks in overtime, and the splitting of the double team that he had, and then the dish to Austin Reeves on a late layup. All 3 of those were vintage LeBron stuff. But this team, when LeBron is unwilling because of his body right now to attack, and Anthony Davis is not scoring the ball at all in the past few games, I'm just not sure that they're going to be able to get enough offense out of this team to beat whoever they play in the next round.
I mean, he looks tired or old or hurt or all of it, right? Like that is where we're at with LeBron right now. And it's still clear that he can turn on these moments of greatness and turn on these moments of just brilliant excellence and these big moments where he gets big buckets and scores and they win the game. And it's clear that like he is like the yell he erupts into after he scores on Dillon Brooks to like ice this game. It's just classic LeBron, and like he's won this, but like it doesn't look like LeBron has
You think? 4 of 11, 1 of 7 from 3 by Brooks. I guess LeBron didn't get to 40 yet, so Brooks doesn't respect him. I guess maybe he'll respect him when the series ends in like 2 days.
Yes. This whole thing is just like the Grizzlies clearly just have these issues, and like maybe the season has been too much for them. It does feel like the Brooks thing is turned into a distraction. Like it just, to me, like I can't extrapolate like the pressure they must be feeling, and I'm also sure Ja being in this situation where it's like, like that clip of him saying like we have no problem in the West is just going to get like memed to all oblivion. Like that is where we're headed with this. But with LeBron, he has enough to still pull off these moments in select spots. And it's like, I loved how he talked about his layup packages after the game, how it's about, like, he went back to like how he scored on the Warriors in 2018, and maybe the best single game performance he's ever had to kind of navigate some of this. But
you don't have to say maybe.
Yeah. I mean, they lost, so it's just like,
Salute to J.R. Smith. Love him still. Anyway,
Yes.
Regardless of any of that.
But this I think it raises questions about like where the Lakers go. Sorry, Dylan, but I am very curious to just see, like, is he somewhat saving himself? Does the foot get better, or is this just what their reality is, and this is what they're working with throughout this run? Because otherwise, like, they're gonna have a lot of if this is the case, if this is what they are, if this is what LeBron is, they're gonna have a very hard time against Phoenix. They're gonna have a very hard time against Denver if they get there.
I don't think they're gonna beat their next opponent. I mean, they're gonna play the Warriors or Kings, and the way the level that those two teams are playing at, especially offensively, I just don't know if the Lakers can keep up. And that's kind of my thing. Like, I think that the Lakers defense has been very good, but, they're at their best when they're creating turnovers and flying around. They had 5 steals and 11 blocks as a team in this game. As I mentioned, it was just who can get the most transition opportunities was kind of the deal. And then LeBron and Russell the Grizzlies were up 7 with 5 minutes to go in this game. Russell had a personal 9-0 run. So, and Reeves was very good in spurts too. It's just, that's not sustainable. If you're going up against Sacramento and it's like, can Russell and Reeves get you past what, Sabonis and Fox and Monk are going to do to you, or obviously, heaven forbid, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green are going to do. I don't think that's a good answer. It has to come from the stars. It's not coming from the stars right now. So I wouldn't feel great about them winning that. But at the same time, like, it feels weird to be negative about this team as they're winning. I just, like, personally felt like they were going to win this series. On the Grizzlies side, though, Chris, is it too early to wonder if they have enough?
No,
that's kind of where I come.
I'm there. I think this series in another playoff loss is going to lead to some kind of adjustment, some kind of changes, some kind of reality change going forward. Like, I think, like, they were rumored or reported to have offered all those draft picks for Mikal Bridges. They're not going to get him, but do they go hunting for another player like that they clearly need to? And it seems like Dylan Brooks, Tim McMahon,
Anunoby, right? Something like that.
I would go looking for that kind of player if I were them. I think you got to switch up the identity a little bit. I think you got to find a way to upgrade and kind of add to stuff. Like I love the template of what they have. I don't think they should lose the DNA of, like, draft guys, plug and play guys, have types. I think that has served them really well. And if they continue to do that on the margins, I think that will continue to serve them really well. I think it's key for a smaller market team to do some of that. But I also think, like, they're in need of something better than Dylan Brooks at the wing, particularly if we're going to play Bane and Morant. And if that guy could also, like, have some offensive ability, like, that would also really help them. If they had a guy that could at least hit some threes, create his own shot a little bit, like, that would take some pressure off of Ja to have to just, like, run into the lane. And look, that hand is clearly bothering him right now. I think there's no way around that. But they're in this situation where I think they're not getting enough out of that spot. And I think they need to modernize in that way. Like, they would have, Mikal Bridges would have made a ton of sense for them. I think, is it Anunoby? Is there someone else that we're not thinking of yet that becomes available? Like, they should be hunting for that kind of player.
I don't think Ja is ever going to adjust his game. I don't think you can expect or ask him to do that, in terms of, well, if we just didn't have to always be worrying about Ja injuries, then we would obviously feel a lot better about our team. I don't think they have that luxury. I don't think he's good enough if he's worried about that or attacking less. Like, that's what makes him special. And he is pretty willing to play off the ball. Bane had it cooking in that third and fourth quarter, and Ja was in the corner. He even took a spot up corner 3. Like, how many, superstar point guards even are willing to do that? I think we're going to talk about one later on who's had trouble with that. So I think that the answer is, have him be off the ball less, have him maybe have to play, I don't know if fewer minutes necessarily makes sense, but just reduce what you're asking of him is going to be the best way to do it. And it's kind of unfair because that's a weird dynamic to have where the style of your best player makes it that he's always hurt, and then all these other guys suddenly have more expected of them than ideally would be the case. But Desmond Bane, he's smaller than a wing would be. He's the size of a point guard, yet he is kind of playing the 2 and 3 a lot. That's not great. He isn't much of a playmaker. He had a nice pull-up mid-range jumper in this game, but that's not always part of his game. It's sort of threes and layups and transition stuff for him, which are not always easy to get because the balance isn't there. And Jaren is still filling out, but it's weird to me because Ja is only 23. I think that there's another level that he can get to as he balances out his offensive game, becomes an even better passer, figures out how to play with his teammates at an even higher level. Bane's only 24, Jackson's only 23, but they were so ahead of schedule that now they've lost in the playoffs 3 times. So I do think that change is going to have to come. It's just, it's weird. It's the curse of drafting too well.
And I think it speaks to the fact that they haven't hit on the thing they need. Like, I like David Roddy. Like, I know you're a Zaire Williams fan. Like, I think the internet broadly really likes Kenneth Lofton Jr. And, like, they gave him a real NBA contract, right? They haven't hit on, like, that wing. They haven't hit on the wing that would kind of be the connective tissue to everything they need and would kind of be, like, the balm to kind of solve some of their issues. Like, having a guy that is more credible to defend like LeBron, even if it doesn't totally work, would give them a big advantage in this series just to kind of navigate some of that stuff, right? Like, I think that's just undeniable that would be a plus for them to just kind of navigate some of these series and also, like, help them, like, play the Suns or play, like, if they got the Celtics at some point in, like, a big matchup. Like, that would help them. And the teams you're going to have to beat, they just kind of are missing that piece. And also, just, like, I really like Bane and I really like Ja. You have built-in issues with that size of a backcourt, and you're also about to pay Desmond Bane a lot of money probably. So, like, the time is kind of now, really. Like, the pressure is on to kind of go make your move now unless you're going to trade one of your core guys. Like, that just feels like where this is at. And I think particularly just, like, with it, how the season has gone, another high seed, another not making a deep run, I think that kind of demands change. It's not like this is like a one-year thing, and you can say, oh, we can run this back, learn from this. Our guys are still really young. It's like you have a defensive player of the year. This coach has been around a little bit. It's starting to get expensive. That I think naturally is going to spur forth some kind of differentiation out of the series. And how much of a chance do you give them to play the same game of actually coming back?
Not much.
I'm at like 3%.
Yeah. One of the interesting, to explain
why.
why, I just feel like I watched their offense and they needed everything Bane gave them in that game. And even then, 3 of 12 from deep. He got cold at the wrong time, late fourth quarter into overtime. He's not much of a threat inside the arc, as I said. He's not much of a playmaker. So they hit their ceiling with what riding his hot hand was going to look like. They had an amazing play where Jaren blocked a Rui cut into a dunk, and then Bane passed it to Jaren passed it to Ja, who passed it to Bane as he got clobbered. And I thought that was going to be the deciding point of the game. Like, they have a style that works. They just need to be more ready for what comes in the playoffs when the game slows down and when defenses are keyed into, hey, Ja's right hand is hurt and he's obviously hampered, so let's just smash him every single time that we can. And then what do you do? And the answer was, well, hopefully Bane can get us there. Like that, it's just not filled out enough. So that's why I would give them a smaller chance. That's why I feel like they do need something. Again, the curse of drafting well. I don't feel like, Chris, outside of just creating extra possessions, and that does go a long way. I don't want to understate that, but I don't feel necessarily like Adams and Clark or Clark would have made a huge difference. Maybe I'm wrong. Davis has struggled, and maybe just 5 extra offensive rebounds per game with the margins being pretty thin would have helped. But I think that can't, that feels like glue and tape for the problem that they have, which is, more consistently strong offensive creation in those moments. Not throw it to Dylan Brooks and cross your fingers like they have been. So, all right. Burning questions of the NBA playoffs. Some of these are things we talked about on the last show, but we can dive in a little bit more on them.
Mm-hmm.
None of these teams have been buried yet, and it feels cruel to bury them, but it's time. So let's do Atlanta first. We haven't talked about Atlanta much. They have been very, not tight-lipped at all about Trae Young being available, I think, or starting to think about what moving on from Trae Young could look like. They hired a head coach of pretty high repute, and like somebody who I don't think takes that job if he feels like he's locked into the given situation. I'm not saying he didn't want to coach Trae. I'm just saying if there is a change to be made, I feel like Quinn Snyder probably was keyed into that at the beginning. At least makes me feel like they're going to be willing to shake things up. And they got blown out by the Heat in the first round last year. They're headed toward that same fate against Boston. Those are the teams that they're going to need to get over the hump against if they're going to win, and they haven't been able to. In the first series, the first playoff run that this team had, they beat a Knicks team that was, very much a regular season squad, and then stomped on the decaying corpse of the Philadelphia 76ers with Ben Simmons. And then, lost to the Giannis-less Bucks. So not exactly like the biggest prove-it thing, and then they've really shown us who they are the past 2 years. DeJounte Murray got suspended for Game 5, so it feels like this series might be over soon, Chris, but what do you do here? I don't exactly feel like DeJounte Murray is somebody you're trying to build a team around, so they don't exactly have the obvious pivot of if they were to explore a trade, what do they do next?
That's the thing. I am fascinated to just see how they would handle like some of their role guys as well, because it's like they have a lot of guys that I think are theoretically good or have had good moments. Like DeAndre Hunter has had a big game in the playoffs, right? Like I think the world of Onyeka Okongwu, but it's like he's stuck behind Clint Capella. Like, what do you do with Clint Capella? What do you do with, are you really tied to like believing in Jalen Johnson, or is he someone you trade because you went and got Sadiq Bey as well, who has not, I think, looked particularly good in this series and like does not move laterally particularly well defensively. Like, I think you have all of these like baked in roster constructions. I wonder how serious the Trae stuff is, and I wonder what Trae is also thinking, because we had a Chris Haynes report a while ago that it's like he might consider asking for a trade beyond if the Hawks would trade him, right? So like you get into this position where I think it leads you to you have to start with Trae and figure that out. Is there another star you could go flip to pair him with that would make him happy? Like, I don't really know if that guy is out there. I don't even know what the ideal fit with him would be. But you already traded for Murray, so it like has to be like, what do you do with Murray? Like, all of this is really complicated. It's also hard to be like, you should just like give up and start from step one again, because Trae is very good. And like, as much as I think he has flaws and I think there's a ceiling on him as your best player, like this is like a star player in this league, and it's hard to just like give that up. But can you take it too far and become the Wizards? I would personally just start with your role players.
They already are the Wizards.
What does Quinn Snyder think of those guys?
I mean,
it's not as bad as the Wizards because Trae Young isn't making $250 billion.
He's on a max. Like,
it just, it doesn't feel as bad to me. Maybe because I also think so highly of Quinn Snyder.
Okay, but
is that unreasonable?
I don't think he's enough to do much to fix this situation. No, I don't feel like.
So would you? Are you going trade Trae? Is that where you're at?
I would definitely explore a trade. I am curious what the market would be for that player. And honestly, a lot of it, less of it is on the court. If you told me, I think there's a bunch of coaches who around the league feel like I can get this guy's mentality to a better place. I can have him, be a little bit more willing to do the less glamorous stuff that you're seeing a point guard like Chris Paul or Ja Morant, who we've talked about, do for the betterment of their team. Not to mention, obviously, Steph Curry or any number of genuine off-ball stars, Jason Tatum. Right. I think that there's a lot of coaches who feel like they could do that part. And I probably think a lot of them are right. I even think Quinn Snyder might, with the full offseason and training camp and everything, be able to do that. I think that it doesn't seem like it has been a very stable, like, fulfilling place to build a basketball program in Atlanta lately.
Sure.
Right? They've gone through two coaches.
And it stemmed from him.
They've gone through any number of players, and all of the noise is still there. Right? And that, to me, is on him. So that's the part where I wonder what you could really get back, and if you might just be stuck with the bed that you made, right? Like, you kind of just have to go as far as the guy that you've tied yourself to is going to take you until it absolutely has run its course. And I don't think we're at it's absolutely run its course point yet. They have one more year of Murray on this contract. They should sure as hell finally trade John Collins, who I think a lot of teams should want. I think he has a lot of untapped potential. I think you explore a Capella trade, and maybe you start to say, we're done being in the business of proving to Trae that we're quote-unquote committed to him. He has not earned that. So we don't need to keep the vets around. We don't need to keep adding the guys that we think he wants from a personality standpoint, or the guys that we think the best version of him is going to fit best with. Trade Bogdanovich potentially. Let the young guys start to play a bigger role. Go into next season with, I'm not saying trade all of those veterans. I'm saying see which ones get you something good. And then you go into next season with Trae and Murray still, and some different variety of the supporting cast, with the young guys playing a bigger role and Quinn's system fully in place. And I don't think you go aggressively on trade Trae Young this offseason, but you start to think about what the post-Trae landscape might be and give yourself some space. If it goes awful, you look at a Trae and a Murray trade at next trade deadline and, start to think about rebuilding from there. But the problem with this team is, and the reason I said that they're kind of like Atlanta, I'm not exactly sure that they're going to be thrilled about, blowing it up. That doesn't seem to be palatable to that ownership.
No, and I would be curious to, again, they had the Travis Schlenk change this year. They changed coaches midseason this year. There's been a lot of change, and I wonder, how far do they want to push it? And if you're trading Trae, I wonder if you just say, all right, studs, let's go to the studs. Let's, keep Jalen Johnson. We'll keep Okongwu.
Griffin's good.
But Murray, someone wanted to, keep Griffin. Hey, Minnesota, do you want DeJounte Murray to play with Ant? Can you give us, at least one pick or something? Can someone, what can we get for, all these guys that would be useful? In Collins, just trade him. I think, for John Collins' sake, I hope he actually just, gets a chance to move on. But, yeah, this would be, the team, to me, that if they just felt get out ahead of it a little bit, and particularly if you want Quinn, if you trust Quinn and it seems like he has some say in the front office to just build something, then I don't think that's an unreasonable way to go. I do wonder who the trade suitors would be.
Think? What team would you, if
Oklahoma
you're running
City,
a front office, what team would you pick to be the best one to pursue him?
Oklahoma City.
Playing
with Trae. Playing with Shea.
How much I love Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
But it's imagine Shea is the cover for him and all the wings and stuff they have to support Trae. It's the right Trae infrastructure, but that also assumes that Trae is willing to do something different, and that is part of the problem with this. I don't know if Trae is willing to be something different than he has ever been. This is one of the problems.
I don't think that's what Sam Presti envisions for that team. If you just look how they built it, bringing a 6-foot point guard who doesn't play defense and hogs the ball does not feel like it would be the zen for that.
No, I agree. Group. I don't disagree. I just my head just without thinking about this too much. I was I could see the idea behind it. And they just have stuff. Orlando, maybe they need a point guard. They need ball creation. I don't know if you want that with your young guys and all that stuff, but I think that one can make some sense. But Utah, I don't does Utah need to do that now? Do any of these teams with lots of picks need to do it now? Like I think it's like the Knicks have Brunson, like so there's no reason for them to do it.
What about
We talked about
what about New
maybe
Orleans?
Brooklyn.
Something centered on CJ and their picks and young guys. I could see New Orleans having the right level of desperation / knowing that they need to kind of adjust what they are, but also they have wings defensively. They have some big man versatility with Nance and Valanciunas and Zion and Ingram, where I think that's a little bit of a better situation than what Atlanta's been able to build. I don't know.
Yes, no question. No, I like that one better than any of my options.
It's tough.
Philly, if Harden goes and they panic,
yeah.
Like that's the kind
what
of
about
thing.
Brooklyn?
I think it's
we
a
talked
team
about
that has a
Brooklyn
little bit of desperation
about how you build them.
Yeah, I said them quickly there. I would you prefer that or Dame for them?
I would prefer a younger player because I don't think you're going to be good enough soon enough in Brooklyn to try to, really win a championship with Lillard unless you just I just don't think that's palatable to Marks. Like if you read that Nick Friedel story, it feels like Marks is really trying to just like get out of that chaos. And Lillard, as much as he's a team player and a good dude, and he's not going to be as much of a nightmare as the off-court stuff was with Harden and Kyrie and Durant, I think like the pressure's on when you bring in a guy in his mid-30s in a way that it's not when he's 26 or whatever Trae is, 25.
I agree.
All right.
I agree with that.
Let's stay in the East. Cleveland Cavaliers. We talked about this quite a bit, but you have it in our notes as what do they do to take a step forward. I feel like the two things to circle back on are Jared Allen trade or firing JB Bickerstaff, or both. So we didn't talk about the Allen side so much. I feel like we should start there. What do you feel like are the considerations that would be going into Cleveland Brain Trust's head as they are thinking about whether to pull the trigger on a big man who they really lucked into getting and developed and has been a huge part of their culture and kind of offensive on-court reset over the past couple of years?
It's a salary question. So if you look at their books, this is a team that doesn't have a ton of tradable salaries. Like Jetty Osman, he's non-guaranteed for next year. He's at like $7 million. Dean Wade's at like $6-something million. Karis LeVert is a free agent. You could sign and trade him or re-sign him to trade him in the summer. Okay, so you have stuff there. You have Ricky Rubio like $6 million. They don't have like a ton of like obviously tradable contracts. Allen's at $20 million flat for a couple more seasons. That's just like the tradable contract. And if like you're gonna say, okay, if you're gonna talk yourself into that move, the idea would be here's $20 million. Can we find a way to get two wings from somewhere for him plus Osman, maybe Okoro? Because like honestly, I think if you're Cleveland, if Bickerstaff's just not going to play Okoro in this series, then like you should probably just trade him now. Like I'm kind of there with that. Like I'm a little just like what do we do?
Or the next coach likes Okoro more, which we'll get to in a second. But so.
Yeah, true.
No, go ahead.
So the team you're calling, and they don't need a center is the problem. Like I was trying to do this exercise, and it's with a friend of mine. Shout out Danny Cunningham at 850, and it's like very hard to find like obvious Allen trades with teams that don't need centers. Like Atlanta, you could see like could you flip him there? Okay, like you need to get Dallas involved to get like Allen there, and then you do a 3-team deal, and it becomes really complicated. Like Brooklyn would be the team you're calling first for Dorian Finney-Smith and/or Royce O'Neal. You're being like, please take our scraps and like give us these wings we really need, including one of Donovan Mitchell's best friends in the entire NBA. Mm-hmm. And you're also just like, but you have Nick Claxton, who is better than Jared Allen this year, in my opinion. Yes. So. I think it's your tricky places, and I think in replacing Allen, I don't think Mobley's going to be ready to be a full-time 82-game center yet. He has not hit that Anthony Davis threshold of like this guy's just a 5. So that means you're trying to get like Mason Plumlee on part of your MLE or something like that to just like give you like 75% of what Jared Allen gave you.
I don't know if there is a one-for-one trade. I think you're right. It's weird because I watch a lot of these teams and it feels like center is a weak spot, but then there's not a lot of teams that need centers. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I feel like part of it is the bad teams aren't prioritizing that spot. And so does one of them feel like they're ready to take the jump? Like I'm thinking of Chicago. If they were to move on from Vucevic, which it doesn't sound like they want to, could that be a little bit more of a stabilizing center that's better, more sturdy defensively, although they were a good defensive team this year? But what are you getting from Chicago? That's not really, a place that has a ton of ready-made player types of assets unless you really, really love Kobe White.
Sure.
And then a lot of these, like even the really bad teams, it's like Houston has Şengün, Detroit has like 6 guys, San Antonio, I guess, but like or Keldon Johnson, like maybe, but you're probably the Cavs are probably having to give more up. I think Johnson might have more value because he's on a cheaper deal and he's younger, and there's that wing over center valuation type of thing. Charlotte has a bunch of young centers. I think Mark Williams is really good. So it's like the teams in the middle, the very bad teams, I don't know if they're really burning to get Allen, and then the best teams already have their answer at center. Otherwise they wouldn't be the best teams. So that's kind of the tough situation that I see with them. I again look at New Orleans because I feel like Valanciunas is not the long-term answer there.
Mm-hmm.
That's about the best I can do.
What
Washington needs a center because I think that they started Daniel Gafford most of the year. I'm not sure what you're looking at with Washington, unless it's a sign and trade with Kuzma. Then you're just like the lucky team of the offseason who happens to get that done. I'm not really sure that's the best offer that'll be there for Kuzma. So it's not easy.
It will not. He's going to get more than the MLE. He's going to get more than the MLE.
I'm not talking about the MLE. I'm saying trading Allen to Washington in a sign trade where Kuzma gets re-signed by them and flipped over to Cleveland.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Good call.
But I don't think that's the best offer that they'll get. If they actually were to explore a sign and trade thing with Kuzma, every team would want him. So,
correct.
Want to switch to Bickerstaff?
Boy, I don't.
More bad news?
I don't think Bickerstaff's getting fired is where I'm at.
Yeah. Let's just play theoretical then. Even if it's not this summer, and it might even be something where we can make it more of a conversation of like, what does Bickerstaff need to do better? Also, not just who do you replace him with. But so Ime Udoka's off the board. We didn't talk about that. Maybe we can next week. He is going to be the coach of the Houston Rockets, which I kind of like, to be honest. I think if he runs an offense like he did in Boston, that could really help those guys.
Also, just like for all of like the stuff with him, like he was really renowned in Boston for like accountability and providing like an edge. And what does that Houston Rockets team need? Accountability.
Yeah, in the spirit of just basketball, I would want to have a separate conversation about the insanity of how everything has played out with Ime Udoka, but on a completely basketball note,
yes,
I think he is a good fit for that roster, much more than Nick Nurse would have been. And I hope that Raphael Stone and the other brain trust in Houston gives us something about what they did to determine how they were going to go about hiring somebody who had been fired and suspended. But I'm not optimistic.
Probably won't. Like, no, I don't think
probably not. But so with Bickerstaff, what types of qualities, like if you could pick a coach, anybody in the NBA to coach the personnel that the Cavs have, who's realistically available, don't say Spo or something ridiculous, because then you're one of every NBA fan who would want Spo. But like, what do they need to do differently at the head coaching spot and kind of like scheme standpoint that they're not right now?
I think they need someone a little more innovative offensively. That gets them playing a little bit quicker and just has a little more deep in the bag. I think like Bickerstaff has stuff that they've run this year that has been pretty good. But I think they just have to, like, I think there's a little more creativity. I think some of this really, honestly, Brendon, more reflects on Kobe Altman, though. Like, Bickerstaff is coaching, like, whoever the coach is going to be. And, like, my answer would be, like, if I could pick any coach, it might be, like, Quinn Snyder, who's not available. So then I'm saying I'm taking Kenny Atkinson. Can I have Kenny Atkinson if I'm Cleveland? That, to me, would make a ton of sense. I think the real issue is, like, does Kobe Altman, maybe their president of basketball operations, the roster is just like lacking. And I don't know if any coach is totally overcoming some of the pitfalls on this roster. That to me is like really the bigger issue. It's like I think Bickerstaff has his limits and quirks as a coach. I don't think he's done a good job coaching in the series, but I don't know if like firing him just to like get a coach who's then going to have to deal with the same problems, even if that coach has different strengths. I don't know if that's even really solving.
Can they get Griff back?
What I would say is if Kobe Altman goes, they'll just what the Cavs have done dating back to Danny Ferris in the Dan Gilbert ownership era is they hire someone from inside.
They're gonna hire that LeBron guy
every single time.
What's his name?
Brandon Weems. No, so it would go. The order would go. It would be Mike Gansey up next, or the other guy that they'd been linked to in the past when Altman was on the hot seat was Brock Aller, who is now the Knicks cap guy and in their front office, and used to work for Rocket companies with Dan Gilbert directly. So it'll stay in house. Let's put it that way. That's how this has worked for 20 years.
That sounds good. That sounds like you are on the money there.
Very healthy, very healthy when like that, and you don't bring out outside ideas really from like people, and a lot of your coaching staff carries over from coaching because like some of the contracts have just stayed.
Being a billionaire and being cheap
really,
tend to be incompatible in sports ownership. Those things don't always go hand in hand.
Very
together.
Healthy stuff.
Last question on this: how much genuine regret do you feel like they have for the Markkanen situation, considering they did take a
or Abaji.
Well,
that's the other one.
Abaji is like you never had
because you were giving
right?
up. Yeah, but you were. I don't think that deal is getting done without Markkanen. I could see a world where that deal is getting done without Abaji.
That's the complicated part, right? Is like obviously he goes for Mitchell, so you don't regret that. But I guess there's a world where you get where you get the breakout from Markkanen, and then maybe Allen is a piece in that Mitchell trade in place of Markkanen, because Markkanen didn't exactly have a ton of value. It's not like he was some sort of blue chip. It's just like he had a big salary. Yes, there was still some untapped potential. Let's take a chance on him. But there's a world in which that piece is Allen instead in the Mitchell trade. Do you feel any regret about that, or is that just like a year has passed, so now hindsight makes it all look different?
Yeah, I don't know if they would have been the team to bring that out of Markkanen, even in Cleveland. I think just like if you're bringing in Mitchell, like he just wouldn't have got that room to breathe. He would have just been the same guy, just maybe playing less three, right? Like I think that's just where that would have headed.
I think the offensive creativity in a world where I don't know if Mobley would have been ready to play full-time center. Maybe in that world you get a cheap center who is a Plumlee or Zeller brother, and just kind of have that option. But your closing lineup is Mobley at the 5 and Markkanen at the 4. It's enticing to me, but I think you're right. If that breakout was going to happen, it probably would have last year, and at some point you just got to move on from something that isn't working. And obviously you get a top 5 MVP finisher. You're not regretting how any of that plays out. All right, let's go on to the Clippers. Let's try to not like cry or go into a deep depression talking about this. Let's also try to not say I don't know a million times. Because this is what's facing the Los Angeles Clippers right now, Chris, is they're about to lose this series in 5 or 6, let's even say 7 games. They're not going to win it, and those guys are hurt again. So what do you do? What do you do with these two superstar players who you gave up everything? You gave up a player in Shea who's already better than one of them, if not at times feels like both of them. And
more available.
And is available, yes. More available.
And more available.
You have this insanely deep roster, so you have the flexibility to keep making moves, but you also are looking down the barrel, and I don't think this has necessarily gotten brought up in specifics because we're not sure how it's all going to roll out with the new CBA. But the Clippers are going to be one of the teams that gets hit the hardest with the second apron, the extra tax bill, the limitations on trades and draft picks and everything else that they're going to be facing with, mid-level exception opportunities and all that stuff. So they're in a position where in the next couple of years they need to come up with a vision for what the next era of this team is going to look like and start to make steps toward that. And Kawhi and Paul George are free agents in 2024, I believe, or can be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think you maybe just got to blow it up. I think I'm there. I think if you're them, can you count on the availability? Could you talk yourself into one more run? Yeah. But I think you got to start prepping for life after Kawhi and Paul George at some point. And I think the time is now. Maybe that means trading Paul, and maybe Kawhi's like, okay, like if Paul's gone, I'm gone too, and you trade him. Like maybe it's just like Kawhi in Miami would be like where I would be like Miami should try to do that.
Miami is one of the only teams I feel like outside of the Clippers who's like Kawhi, you want to play 20 games a year? Come on over.
Yeah, it's either that or I want like the oddballness of like Kawhi playing for Tibbs.
Tibbs would.
Where Tibbs is like, he'll
Tibbs
play
would need a moment to himself if he heard that news. It's like, I get better Luol Deng, like,
who doesn't play as much.
Who I don't even have to worry about overplaying and running into the ground because that's already happened. Like, count me in.
Yeah. Except the fact that he'd be like, I need him every night. And he's like, I can't start Kawhi in the playoffs because he like didn't play 82 games for me.
Let me ask you this. Which of them has more trade value right now?
Kawhi. Kawhi you could trade, and I think you could talk yourself into him helping you win a championship. Paul George is not quite there. Like, he's very, very good. But, like, his ceiling is nowhere near what Kawhi is. Kawhi looked like the best player in basketball for, like, 2 months. And I understand the injury stuff, but it's like, if you could talk yourself into it, I think you'd get more out of Kawhi.
Yeah, Kawhi being the best player in basketball, I think, is a little bit of a stretch. But
I said over the last couple, there was a stretch for a couple months where he looked like the best player in
controls
basketball.
games as well as anybody. I'm right there with you.
Look what he just did before he got hurt against the Suns.
One of those games. Like, I mean,
that guy could
come on.
Yeah.
It's like.
I'm just saying he was great.
He was. He made
really
our top 4/5 list. But look, I think I agree because as much as George's availability tends to be better, I don't think that's enough of a difference to overcome the fact that if you're getting Kawhi Leonard, you're getting a bona fide number one player who can lead your team in the playoffs to a championship with a great supporting cast around him. Paul George, even in his best days, is not that. His best version of leading a team was losing in 6 to the Suns in the conference finals 2 years ago. And that was an admirable performance, very solid, the best he could have done, but that was the best he could have done, and it didn't get you where you needed to go. I think that I don't know what a Paul George trade does for you if you start there.
Correct.
And so I tend to lean the same direction as you, where it's like, it's kind of both or neither.
You know who would be but who could make the Paul George trade, and you could tell yourself it made a lot of sense? A team like Cleveland.
Well, they're not able to, are they?
Like,
unless
that's
they're
the kind of
Mobley
team
or Garland.
I know, no, right? That's what I'm saying. But it's like that's the kind of Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
That would make sense to me.
That.
Like, because it's like, hey, we have our superstar,
another disrespected /
come in,
mocked player to come join Memphis.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. But that's the kind of team. It's like a little like that can fit him into this role, and like he doesn't need to play every night. Like if he can't, like that has a clear need, can assume some of the playmaking duties from these other really good players on the team, can help defensively on the wing. Like that's the kind of team that he would provide.
So that's
the most
not my
value
concern.
to.
There's a million. Every team would want Paul George. It's more so what is LA getting back? What are the Clippers? I hate calling the Clippers LA. I don't feel like they've earned that. What are the Clippers getting back to make it worthwhile to trade
Burbank.
Paul George? That's more where I was coming from. A team with Kawhi and Paul George, I feel like you're going to pick that 10 times out of 10 over a team where you still try to keep Kawhi, but you have now, Desmond Bane and like Zaire Williams and a pick.
It would be a team, I think, that like a Memphis or a New Orleans that has a little bit of desperation and has a need and overpays with their plethora of draft picks. That's the team. Those are the teams. It's the teams with a lot of assets and a clear need and a need to do something. And then they overwhelm you and you say, well, we're getting a bunch of the picks back that we lost from doing this in the first place. And we can start to recover that way. That's what I think you're looking at. Is that enough? I don't know, but that's the offer you're getting. It's like Herb Jones.
But what does that do? What does that do for the Clippers? Is what I'm trying to get at. That doesn't feel like it ends with a result.
If you're
that's
keeping
more
Kawhi,
comfortable,
it's nothing,
right? It's like
if you're keeping Kawhi, it doesn't really do anything. But if you're not keeping Kawhi, it just allows you to tank. It allows you to properly tank, and Jason Preston can turn a point guard next year.
That's your end game.
That's right. That's my personal end
Doesn't
game. That's
Ohio University running this entire operation of just basketball so far give you enough satisfaction? Do they have to own the Clippers as well?
Yeah, we're actually buying the Clippers from Steve Ballmer.
Good luck.
Me and Peter King and Don. we absolutely, me and the boxing promoter and alum Don King are just pulling together some money over on the side. Don't worry about it. I don't even know if Don King's alive anymore.
Rest in power if he isn't. So I think that's
well. But it's a reset. It's if Steve Ballmer wants to restart his Windows computer, that is the LA Clippers. Mm-hmm. This is the way to do it.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Jazz, right?
Is there another way?
It's what Danny Ainge got to do last summer with the Jazz, and now all of a sudden, 1 year later, we feel awesome about Utah. They got a nice new coach. They got a breakout season from one of the guys they got back. They got a nice rookie in Walker Kessler and some other vets that are continuing to produce, and they got even in-season trades to keep adding to their stockpile. The Clippers are opening a new arena.
You can trade.
Do they want, whatever young guys from Memphis to be on the banners when they do the unveiling of the new Inglewood Stadium?
Here's the thing, though. I think they will have the same problem the Nets have in New York, which is that I don't know if anyone's going to care that they matter that much. It's like they will have a hardcore dedicated fan base that loves them. But are the Brooklyn, it still felt like New York was like a Knicks thing more than it was a Nets thing, even with KD and Kyrie on the Brooklyn Nets. I don't think that's going to be the case in LA. That's not you're not going to steal market cap away from the Lakers.
I'm not saying you're going to steal market cap away from the Lakers. I'm saying if you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to build an arena, you probably want to put a competitive product on the wood that is inside of that arena rather than a bad product, because you still need to make money off of your operation, and having the best player on your team be like BJ Boston is not probably going to get that job done if you're Steve Ballmer.
No, but I also think you're running a lot of risks with the Kawhi part of this as well, and there's not an easy answer for any of that. It's all going to be, I think, very tricky for them to navigate. And then he wonders, what does that mean? Does Ty want to stick around if they go rebuild? Does he be like, all right, I'm gonna take a year off or something? Where does that push him? And then do you go get your own Will Hardy type of Will Hardy? Do you go hire that kind of assistant coach? Especially, and I wonder too, and this is kind of a noble, and this is maybe a good place to kind of end this. I wonder how the looming CBA changes will make them kind of view this. Do they need to reset just to kind of build back financially in a different way? Because they're one of the teams that will be most affected by the new salary cap structures, and I know those will take a year or two to implement and fully be integrated, but that wouldn't surprise me if that is on their mind.
I'll give you a break that my preambles are long, but I did say that. I do feel like they need to.
It's okay. Sorry, I was looking up their good. salaries and who else they could trade.
I ramble a lot of guys that they could trade for. I had the Kawhi, the Paul George. They got to get their things set up, and I do think that matters because I feel like they right now are very top heavy, and then they have these middle contracts, and even a younger, like we talked about with you said the difference between Trae and Beal is one is a max off of a rookie deal, one is the biggest possible max, and that is, the difference of $10 to $15 million. So even if you reset it with a little bit of a younger angle, you're going to make your roster cheaper that way, and maybe you don't have Robert Covington making, $15 million sitting on your bench, and you just start to be a little bit more tactful with all that stuff. I'm not sure, but there's not an easy answer. It wouldn't surprise me if at some point in the next few weeks we heard, Chris Haynes or somebody say they're beginning conversations about what the future might look like. Steve Ballmer has called a meeting with Kawhi Leonard in San Diego to talk about how to proceed. Something like that. That would not shock me. All right, let's wrap it up there. More playoff basketball. Most of these series will be over the next time we talk, Chris, and we might already have had some game ones. Hopefully, these second-round series should be awesome. Follow us wherever you listen. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on social media, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Wherever you are, we are also there churning out content for you. Thanks to Dylan Heiser and Jake Stevens for producing the show, as always, and we'll catch you guys next week.